Hey everyone, it's Twisty Fox here, and so today I want to talk about the announcement for the removal of clock. So, for those of you who don't know, a few days ago the WCA announced that they're planning on removing clock after Worlds 2027, and they're adding FTO at the start of 2027. Now, first off, I think it's amazing they are adding FTO. I'm really happy. I've recently got an FTO. I've learned how to solve it. I average probably like 5 minutes. I'm really bad. I need to finish learning some of the Alex and learning better cases. But I can solve an FTO, and I definitely think that it's going to be super fun to have a new event at the WCA. I know some people are attacking and saying that FTO killed clock, and while I'm going to talk about my thoughts about clock in a minute, I want to be clear that I am super excited for FTO. So kudos to the WCA for doing one thing right, but I don't think a wrong makes up for a right, or I don't think they balance each other out, because the removal of clock to me is super egregious. And for the last few years there's been a few different things that the WCA's done that have not been popular opinions, such as the decisions with sliding, or DNFing the blind solves with the logos, or the Vietnam situation. I don't even keep up with every controversy. I'm just listing some of the top of my head. But the point is, the WCA has made unpopular decisions, and I think sometimes the community, just kind of deals with it and is like, oh well, that's too bad anyway. But I do think we are getting to a breaking point where people, including myself, are just feeling less and less happy with the way that things are being run, and less like our voices as a community are being heard. And for me, this culminates with the removal of my favorite event, clock. So I've talked for like a minute already, 2 minutes already, and I've not even said my interest in clock. So hi, I'm Caleb Fox. For those of you who don't know, I've been cubing since 2015. I think I started clock like late 2017, and I've never been world class at clock. I've never been like at the top. But back in 2018, I did have a single that was like 80th or 90th in the world. It was a 6.36 single, which I think tells you two things. Firstly, I think it shows like how bad people were at clock. That the fact that I had a 6-second single. I had practiced probably for like 4 months at that point of like seriously practicing clock as probably my main event. I think I had like the Rubik's with the Lingao with the Rubik's pins, and I was able to get 80th in the world as just like a 14-year-old kid who, like, this wasn't even my full-time job or anything. I just was doing it on the side when I would have been doing 3x3 or learning OLL or PL or something. Instead, I was just doing clock. Like, that's how fast I was able to get. I didn't even have a dedicated practice routine. Just little old me was able to get top in the world, and I think this is more about clock than it does about me. So clock has definitely come a long way since then. Now there's obviously the good Qi hardware. They might just come out with their clock that's apparently kind of bad, but it's the new clock. I think Xingqiao has a new clock. 7 Simul's popular now, and people are using all sorts of crazy techniques and methods and all sorts of stuff. Like, the improvements in clock are insane. And I did drop off clock probably, I want to say at the end of 2019. I lost my clock at nationals for that year, and then I just kind of stopped doing it until I bought a Qi clock a few years ago. But this year I started learning 7 Simul. I can't inspect in 15 seconds all the time. I can sometimes. I probably average around that, probably a little slower than that. I've not been practicing. But I have learned 7 Simul. I probably average faster with 7 Simul, maybe 7.5 seconds. And so point is, I am not speaking from a place of like, I am number one clock solver, I know everything about clock, I am the majority. I'm speaking from the perspective of someone who is not necessarily super fast, but someone who is experienced and is in the community, and I do really care about this event. And just hearing it being removed, I mean, like, my first thought is like, I might legitimately quit cubing. And I've been cubing for, I said 10 years, it's been 11 years now, I guess. And I never would have said I stopped cubing. I've taken breaks, month breaks. Probably even there's been like a year or two here where I've not really done mini solves at all. I mean, there's a big gap between my competitions. I didn't go from a competition for any time from 2020 to 2025, I think. So like a 5-year gap in that time. And I still solving, but like didn't, really show up. But the removal of clock just might make me quit, honestly. just because this is an event that I've poured so much dedication into more than anything else. And again, not at the top level, but for 7 Simul, I was getting up every day, and before I did any school, anything, I would just sit down and do 30 minutes of 7 Simul. And that is the most I've ever practiced any event. Every other event, I just do a few solves while watching a YouTube video and have a fun time. And if I have a bad finger trick, then I just deal with it. I don't cube necessarily to be at the top level. I cube because I find it to be a fun thing to do, just for the sake of doing, not necessarily improving and being at the top of my game. So, but that was like the exception to that. That was me, making a routine, learning 7 Simul. I even started learning letter pairs, and I've actually learned all my blind letter pairs just because I was, motivated enough from that. So I've had so much practice, and obviously not nearly as much practice as like people who are, world class. So I can't even imagine what they're feeling right now. And the biggest thing to me is that, if it was removed earlier, like back, 2018 when I had my 6-second single, I would have been complaining just as much as I am now, probably a little more because I was more whiny as a teenager. But the community would not care at all. But now the thing has changed where the community does actually care, at least a lot of people. There are some people who don't care, which, I think in some sense, I don't want to be finger pointing, but I'm going to point my finger. This is people's event that they have practiced a lot, that has been recognized by the WCA since 2004, I think. It may not be your favorite event. You don't have to like it, but it has been, it's been part of the WCA canon for that amount of time, an amount of time where people have decided that they can get good at it, or they can play around with it. And to just remove it on a whim from the results of a poll where you were asking people what events are most primed to be removed, that has less votes than the poll or the petition about people asking if they want clock back or not. And obviously, like the sampling bias, whatever. It just feels like a very unfair decision that the executives at the top are making. They've not listened to the community at all. And I've heard that there's already been talks where like they say they're not going to undo this decision. Now, of course, situation where like if they say, well, we're not going to undo it, you could always undo it. At this point, I don't know what to believe. I would not expect them to add it back in. But I'm going to hope, and for one thing I'm going to be doing is not talk about it as if it's going to be removed. And this might just be me, having the copium, being in denial or whatever. But the way I'm at least going to talk about this is I'm not going to say clock is going to be removed. I'm going to not try this anyway. I'm going to say, like the WCA wants to remove clock. If we've already accepted that it's removed, then I feel like, any more complaining, any more fighting, any arguing, it's kind of pointless if we're like, well, it's going to be removed. It's been announced to be removed. It's the plan to be removed. I'm still having faith to hope. Maybe I have the copium in here or whatever, but, that's my hope. One other complaint I wanted, this is videos all over the place. This is just my unedited, maybe a little edits, but my mostly unedited thoughts about clock. One other thing is people say it's hard to run, and I've heard some clock members saying like, well, it's actually really easy to run now that the pins aren't part of the scramble. I will, as a clock solver, say that compared to other events, it is harder to run. I have a personal anecdote about this. At Williamsburg Open Spring 2026, whatever, the last competition I went to, you can look at my WCA profile. I had 2 rounds of clock there, and I definitely got the general vibe that for, people who were helping out, such as like kids who might have not been necessarily solving clock or parents, a lot of them did know a lot less about clock. So a lot of them I would have to definitely do the thing where like flip, check the other side, or, like, so you're like, well, now you can actually have the clock laying down or face up. It's fine either way. And I definitely had to give a little more guidance on that sort of stuff. But still, at the end of the day, it was the type of situation where, like, it's not that hard to run. And definitely at that competition, at least, like, running blind was a lot more chaotic. And part of that was because I messed up some of the rounds where I didn't do blind when I was supposed to. And you can watch my vlog if you're interested in the drama about that. But point is, clock at that competition at least was Houston 3 blind. I don't advocate for 3 blind removal. I know some people are advocating for the bigger blinds removal. I don't advocate for that either. I think any event that has been in the WCA for this long at this point, I think all of them right now are good. That's my opinion. I think that there's a certain level of, if an event is in the WCA events, you expect it to be there and not be removed unless if you have good reason. And I just don't see the reasoning for that right now. People still like it. I would say, it's not quite a toasty puzzle like a Pyraminx or a 3x3 or whatever. It has other colors. But, it is a puzzle. There is solving required. It's not like Magic where there's no solving required. It is hygienic. It's not like Feet. I was upset about Feet back in the day too. Looking back, I think it's a little weird that we did have that in the first place, where your stinky feet are touching a cube, and especially I wonder how that would have been if we got into COVID times, and like we're worrying about COVID and we're worrying about feet. A whole different side, but clock, I think, to me at least, is a mainstay. And I think that we should be fighting back. So what can we do? Well, I already mentioned this earlier, but we can definitely, the language we use about we want clock, we're going to have clock, we're going to do clock in some way or another is important. I don't know necessarily exactly what's going to happen, but if the WCA removes clock, I'm not going to stop clock. I'm going to, I'm sure other people are going to make some organization. I've seen some talks about alternate organizations, and I'm definitely going to be going to those competitions to compete in clock, because I want my practice for clock to go somewhere. I want it to be recognized by other clock solvers, fast, slow, whatever. I want it to count somewhere. I don't want to just be at my little home desk, doing solves, doing clock. I want to go to competitions and do clock. So I think definitely recognizing that there's some future for clock, whether it's the future we like or, maybe not going back in the WCA, but there's something we can do about it. Sign the petition also. I mentioned this earlier in the video again, but there's a petition for bringing back clock. Who knows if that's going to do anything or not in the end, but it's definitely not going to do something if you don't sign it, and it takes like 2 minutes just to write your name in there, put your email. So definitely sign the petition. And third, this is more of a self-plug, I guess, but I'm going to North American Champs, which is going to be in like less than a week, like a few days. So very soon, and probably by the time you're watching this, if you're watching this late, is not relevant anymore. I am going to be printing shirts up for free clock. I'm going to put the design up here. I don't know, somewhere on screen. You'll see it. And my girlfriend made this design. Shout out to her. I asked her to make it. I begged her to make it, honestly, because I really wanted a cool design, and she delivered. It looks awesome. I'm going to be putting up these shirts. So if you want one and you're watching this before like tomorrow evening, just let me know. I can get in contact with you. Pricing will be around $20 per shirt, and I can do any size from small to 5XL. So should accommodate most people. Probably everyone. I don't know. I'm not getting into that. But yeah. So shirts, petition. And just generally, like when I'm doing here, making a video where I'm just talking about my thoughts, even if it's, not the most like well said thoughts or anything, or the most prolific realizations, just sharing and being loud about your outrage or your disappointment or the injustice of clock being removed. Definitely keep making noise, because that's the only way, we're going to get heard. And I'm sure there's more ways, so definitely just engage with the community. I've been part of the clock Discord now, and I've been finding that really fun. So if you're interested at all in clock, I would recommend joining that. Anyways, that's about it for this video. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I'll probably be doing some recording for North American Champs, so definitely keep an eye out for that, and I'll see y'all there.